So the first step with cross stitch is to prepare your fabric. So once you've got your fabric, the best thing you can do is give it a quick press with an iron, just to make sure you've got it completely flat. Because when it comes to you, you can see here it's got a couple little creases in where it's been folded up in the box. Once you've pressed those out, then we're going to find the center of the fabric, because we want to start by finding the center of the fabric, but also by finding the center of our pattern as well, because we need to start at the right point, because if we start stitching randomly and then it kind of grows up and up and up, you can run the risk of it coming off the edge of your fabric. So we'll start at the center and go from there. So to find the center, we're just easiest way possible, rather than counting it, we're going to fold it in half and pop a little crease in there, and then do the same the other way and pop a little crease in, and where those two creases meet, that is our center point there. So I'm going to mark that with a pencil, and then I'm going to use that on the back, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to see that pencil mark on the front. Now if you've got a heat erasable pen, you can mark the front as well if you wish, but ideally just flip it onto the back. So the next step is we're going to take our hoop. So the piece with the bolt on goes underneath, the other piece goes over the top, and then you might need a little bit of pressure just to pop those in place, and then just center it the best you can to keep that dot in the middle. So from there, we're going to just tighten this up a little bit to make sure that that's not going to slip around on us when we're sewing. And then we're going to take it to the chart and find the center of there as well, because we need to, as we said, to start everything in the middle. Once you've got that middle point, you can work really, really easily from there. So now that's in, we're going to have a quick look at the chart. The chart, we have on here 57 lines going across the top, and we have 71 lines coming down the side. So you need to divide both of those in two to find the center. So 57 divided by 2 is around the kind of 28-ish mark. So we're going to come down there. And these are actually marked out in sets of kind of 5 squares as well, so it's really, really easy to count as well. And down the side we've got 71, so let's say 35. We'll take that across, and that is our starting point there. So I'm just going to circle that one, because that's where we're going to begin. So we're going to start with the red one. Now we actually want to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches back from that to start a full row. But before we start stitching, we've got to have a look at the thread. So the thread comes to you in full skeins like this. There is way more than you are going to need here. There's so much in here, and you're going to find that you use very little of some of the colours. For example, the peach there on the nose, you're just going to need the tiniest bit of that, and the black for the string on the balloon, and the feet there. Tiny bit of that as well. So you may even have enough here. Maybe add an alternative to the red and the blue, and should be able to make a second one. So let's quickly have a look at these. So these are all 6-strand cottons. We're going to work with only 3 strands. So what you need to do is take a piece of the cotton, and what I recommend is, if you find the end, leave both of these paper tags on, and just slowly pull it out, and then pull it out a second time. So you've effectively got kind of 4 times the length of the skein. That's kind of a perfect length to work with, because it's not so long that it's going to get tangled up, but it's not so short that you're going to be replacing your thread every 5 minutes. So this is about the same size as kind of 4 of those. Let me pop these to one side, and we're going to split the skeins. These are 6-stranded cottons, so if I hold it really still, you might be able to see here. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in there. You've got 6 tiny little strands. We're going to split them into 3 and 3. So this, first of all, gives you a more delicate look to your cross stitch, because we are working on a 14 count Aida. 14 count means 14 stitches, 14 crosses per inch. So that's quite a lot, there's quite a lot in there. And to split these, I'm going to take 3 in each hand, and then just run my finger down the center, allowing it to kind of free flow in between, and that will just separate them out. There you go. Just trying to show you there. Separate them out as you go, and then you'll have 2 separate strands of cotton ready to go. So once you've got your separated strand, you need to thread that into your needle. And then we've already got our starting point marked on the chart. And then we'll begin to stitch. Now with cross stitch, it's really important to get into a little bit of a rhythm with it and to keep everything going in the same direction. So are they all through? Oh, I think yes, I've got them all through. Excellent. So once we're all threaded, we are good to go. So there's our center point. We had a look at our chart, and our chart, that was our middle one there. Let me just flatten that for you. This was our middle one, and we're going to start doing a full row here. So we're going to count back 5 stitches to find our start point. So from the center, and by a stitch, if you have a look on the Aida, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 holes on each corner. So that, if I just pencil one in there, that would be a stitch. So we're going to come back 1, 2, so 1, 2, and they're right next to each other, remember, 3, 4, 5. So this point here is going to be our start point. So you need to thread up your needle. Some people can find this a little tricky. Always advise maybe a needle threader if you're struggling with it, or just make sure you've got a nice sharp end on your thread, so definitely kind of cut it off to a nice straight edge if you need to. Okay, so we are going to flip it over onto the back. We've marked out where we need to start, so there was our center. We marked out the extra 5 stitches just with a pencil. You can do this with a heat erasable marker if you wish. We're going to take the thread through from the back to the front and leave a nice little tail on it, about an inch or so. This we're going to kind of trap in as we do our first row of stitches, and then that means we don't have to have a knot in place, and it keeps everything nice and secure. So from there, we flip it over and we go from the bottom right to the top left. I'm going to flip it back just so you can see where I need my thread to go. So my thread's going to loop over that tail that I've left and in a straight line back to that bottom row again. Flip it over, we're going to go back up the top, flip it over, and I'm just holding that in place with my finger as I'm stitching just to stop it going awry. And I need 10 stitches, remember, for that first row. So let me just whiz through these now, and once you get the hang of it, you will fall into quite a rhythm. Now if you're not using a hoop, you may find it easier to kind of go in and out of your stitches. Sometimes if you've got it in a hoop and there's tension on there, that isn't quite so easy. So it's whatever's easier for you. We're looking for the results, not how you got there. But this technique of trapping that thread in the back really does help to keep everything nice and neat. If you've yet left yours a little bit long, you can always just grab a pair of scissors and trim that off. So let me just have a quick count to see how many more I need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3 more. And then we're going to repeat a very similar process, but coming back in the opposite direction to create the crosses. So I need another couple. And by always doing them in the same direction and always keeping your crosses going, your bottom layer going in one way and your top layer going in the other, you'll get a really nice even result to your finished work. So that's our first row in. Then we are going to come in and head to that bottom corner as if we were going to start a new stitch, and then instead of starting a new stitch, I'm going to come back and create those crosses, and then just repeat that process all the way back to allow really nice even crosses. And it's a nice quick way to do them as well, rather than individual ones. Individual crosses are the English way to do it, and I believe this is I think it's the Dutch way of doing it. It's different ways of doing it all over the world, but I think that this one gives you nice even results. So I would continue on with that all of the way to the end, and then I'll show you how to start another row, because that's pretty straightforward as well. Again, when you're looking to travel between areas, it's quite important that you don't span anything too far, because if I'll show you in a second when I get to the end here, you can kind of say your new row was going to start a couple of stitches in from the end. That's fine. You can travel that distance, no problem. But if you're traveling much larger distances, say 5, 7, 10 stitches away, then what you'll end up with is you'll end up with kind of baggy loops of floss on the back of your fabric, and you really don't want that, because then it's got either a chance of showing through if there's nothing else stitched into that area. If it's a light coloured floss, again, you run the risk of it showing through. So small travels, fine, there's no need to cut it off. Larger travels, yes, I would definitely just stitch the edge back in and then head away again. So that's my first 10. So from there, I'm going to go back to my template so I can see I've done my first. Let me just pop that in the centre there for you. So there's my first 10. So I'll mark those off in pencil so you can see. And then my next row starts 2 across from this one I've just completed. So I'm now going to find that location. So if I bring this across, there's my first row. So that would be 1 stitch across. And then if I pop up the next hole, that will be 2 stitches across. And I can start straight away again from there on my next row. And you just build it up 1 row at a time. Just find your bearings on the chart and start stitching small rows at a time. And it's such an easy once you've got the hang of the technique. There's so many different cross stitch patterns out there, and there are so many different backgrounds, different there's more involved techniques, and I'll show you a couple of finishing techniques a little bit later on. So that's the basics of cross stitching. I'm going to do another second video which will take you through some of the more technical bits and how you can also finish your projects off.